Tonight I want to talk about fatty liver because I think that it is a topic that is very misunderstood, and it is really close topic for me. My mom actually died in 2024 due to complications of fatty liver. She had fatty liver for decades, was told to just watch it, and it progressed to cirrhosis and later cancer, liver cancer and pancreatic cancer. And she passed away 6 months after her diagnosis. But fatty liver is one of those things that a lot of people think it's like due to eating too much fat, or you have to be an alcoholic to have fatty liver, and that is so far from the truth. So I want to set the record straight and let you know that in most cases, fatty liver can be reversed, especially if you're in the beginning stages of it. So tonight I want to talk about what fatty liver really is and how it's a sign of insulin resistance, and most likely due to insulin resistance and circadian disruption. Usually it's these two things combined that really are very problematic. And we'll also talk about my 90-day reset that is phenomenal for people to undergo and see a complete transformation of their fatty liver. And we'll also talk about what labs to ask your provider for, because there are no direct definitive labs that you can test and say, I absolutely have fatty liver. But there are certain lab markers that can kind of clue you into it. And there are definitely other ways that you can have a definitive diagnosis. And then we'll also talk about just how to rebuild that metabolic health. So if you can't join me for this live, I'm also going to be airing this on my podcast called Optimal Metabolism. I know for me to watch a live, for half an hour, doesn't usually happen, but I do love listening to podcasts, and I'm a podcast junkie. So if you love podcasts, you can find it next week. It'll be airing next week, the second week of November. What would the date be? I believe it would be November 10th or 11th, November 11th, I believe, on Optimal Metabolism. So just search that up, search up my name, and you'll find it. So let's talk about what fatty liver is. And like I said, this is a topic that is near and dear to me. And my mom died in 2024, and I think it was 2023 or maybe the fall of 2022, she asked me to start coming to some doctor visits with her because her fatty liver had progressed to cirrhosis. And I didn't even know that she had symptoms and signs of fatty liver. She had elevated liver enzymes for at least 12 years. I think it was much longer than that, but at least 12 years that we could trace back in her medical chart. So I think it was a lot longer. And, I didn't know obviously as much then as I know now, but if I would have known sooner, I could have definitely pointed her in the right direction, right? And how to reverse this, because once fatty liver progresses to the stage of cirrhosis is basically scarring of the liver, and this usually takes a long time to progress. But once it gets to the point of cirrhosis, then we can't reverse that anymore. Those scars are more permanent, and they can cause a lot of damage. They can cause the liver to not function as well. This is what my mom saw, and unfortunately, a lot of times they do progress to cancer. And this was the case in my mom. And I will tell you, when I first started as a dietitian, a long time ago, I've been practicing since 2000. So I've been in the field for 25 years. When I graduated college and I first started to see patients, really the only time I saw anybody with fatty liver was when there was alcoholism. And it was known as, alcoholic fatty liver disease. And then, over the next 10 years or so, we started to see more cases, and we had to differentiate between, alcoholic fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And now there's just like all of these classifications for fatty liver, and, they seem to change all the time, and the acronyms are changing, but really fatty liver is due to insulin resistance. Almost always, unless it is a classic case of someone who's abused alcohol for a very long time. In a lot of cases, then of course, fatty liver can be due to that. But in most circumstances in this day and age, it is due to insulin resistance. And most people think it's because they just eat too much fat or they eat out at restaurants, and that's just not the case. That can definitely exacerbate the issue. But what's striking is 1 in 3 adults it's hard to pinpoint because the testing is kind of difficult for fatty liver, but about 1 in 3 adults have fatty liver now, including non-drinkers. So again, it's not just from alcoholics, alcoholism actually is a small percentage of fatty liver now. And another thing that's very, very scary to me is that fatty liver is becoming really prominent with children. And that is scary to me because children should not have fatty liver ever. This is an insulin resistance issue. And I know of babies and toddlers who have insulin resistance. Sometimes they're born with it. If the mother is severely insulin resistant and has blood sugar issues, that child can be born with insulin resistance as well. So this can strike at any age, any generation, any race, doesn't matter, male, female. It doesn't differentiate from children to adults to elderly. It can be with anybody. And really we want to understand how severe and how disruptive fatty liver can be. We need to know a little bit about the liver, and the liver is the body's main filter. The kidneys and the liver are the body's main filters. And it also controls a lot of our metabolism. The liver, I've heard it as the soccer mom of the body. And it is, it takes care of so many things. It filters toxins. It filters many other things, but it also is really your metabolism center. So it decides if you're going to be burning carbohydrates, fats, proteins. It breaks down fats, it stores fats, breaks down carbs, stores carbs. There's just a lot going on in the liver. So when your liver's not functioning well, you feel terrible basically. And so it's not about the fat in the diet. It's about extra fuel in the body. And your body just being metabolically sick and not being able to utilize that energy that's coming in. So it's one thing if, we eat a meal and our body's I can completely metabolize this. I can store it as fat if I need to. I can store it as carbohydrates. But if you have insulin resistance and insulin levels are high throughout the day and you're not metabolizing carbohydrates well, and maybe you're not even metabolizing fats well, you have a problem, right? We don't just eat and poof. Everything is all hunky-dory in our body. No, there's so many processes that need to go on and so many hormones that need to be in ideal levels and metabolic processes, mitochondria. There's just a lot that goes on. So if our liver's not working well, if we have extra energy that's not being utilized and your body doesn't know what to do with it, the liver is the metabolic center. So basically your body can only store so much carbohydrate and sugar. So your body will store extra carbohydrate and energy in muscle tissue and in the liver, but it's a finite amount. You can't just keep storing carbohydrate. After you reach that finite level, then your body has to, I've stuffed as much carbohydrate in my muscles and my liver as I can, and I still have all this carbohydrate, this glucose in my bloodstream. What the heck do I do with it? And that's where the liver has to decide, I better convert this to fat because I can't have all this high blood sugar. I can't have my blood sugar too high. That is not good for the body. That sends alarm bells off to the body. and your body likes a really tight control on blood sugar. So then the liver starts saying, okay, I got to do something with this. And it starts to convert all of that extra carbohydrate and glucose and sugar in the bloodstream over to fat. And then we're not burning that off. Like, where does that fat go, right? It's like, okay, well, now I converted it to fat. Now what the heck do I do with this? And so it starts to stuff it everywhere, wherever it can. It starts to stuff it in the muscles, starts to stuff it in the liver, which is how we get the fatty liver. It starts to stuff it around the organs. So it's not just like we stuff, fat on our buttocks. That's not as harmful fat, but the body starts to stuff it around the organs, and that's not good. The fat around your organs is definitely more unsafe, and there's a lot more, metabolic symptoms and issues that come out of too much fat around the organs. And so that's basically what fatty liver is. It's just a surplus of energy, usually due to too many carbohydrates coming in, too much glucose in the bloodstream. So you get high blood sugars. A lot of people think, oh, diabetes. And that's right. I mean, you become type 2 diabetic, prediabetes and type 2 diabetic, but because your blood sugar is high and your liver's like, I don't know what to do with this, it starts to stuff it in the organs and in the liver, and then we get fatty liver. And so there's just a lot of issues that come about from having a surplus of energy in our body. And that can get complicated. Some of it has to do with, just eating too much and eating too often and eating too many carbohydrates. But sometimes, like, people just aren't eating a whole lot and they're not eating a lot of energy, but their insulin is high, and it's been high for years or decades, called insulin resistance. And then our body has a lot of trouble burning fat. And so that's what really fatty liver comes down to in the vast majority of cases. So what are some warning signs? Because like I said before, it's really tough to just say, I need a blood test for fatty liver. In a lot of cases, your liver enzymes called your ALT and your AST, so ALT and AST, they have really long names. They stand for really long names, but those are two liver enzymes that tend to be elevated when you have fatty liver or your liver is not functioning very well, but not always. But in a lot of cases, these two enzymes will be elevated. But even if they're not, you can still have fatty liver. And the only way that you can get a definitive diagnosis for fatty liver, a lot of times your blood sugars are high too, right? Like you might be pre-diabetic or you might have type 2 diabetes. There's a very, very strong correlation that you also have fatty liver if you have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, because the insulin resistance feeds both. But an ultrasound or an ultrasound, oh my gosh, what's the other the other test that you need to do? It'll come to me. But an ultrasound is really the only way that a provider would need to take an ultrasound and actually look at the liver and see if there's fat around it. It's not, you don't get a definitive diagnosis just from elevated liver enzymes or elevated blood sugar. So some of the warning signs would be belly fat or fat around the organs because of the reasons I just went over. Your body's converting the extra energy to fat and stuffing it around the organs. And so your waistline starts to expand. Skin tags. A lot of times people don't realize that skin tags, I used to have a couple of them. But, those kind of brown taggy things, mostly a lot of times they'll be around the neck or in the armpits. Sometimes, I call it the leg pits, but I don't know if that's the actual, the underside of the legs. Those are some places that skin tags tend to accumulate. Those are a really strong sign of diabetes, fatty liver, and insulin resistance. And interestingly enough, a lot of times skin tags will fall off as insulin resistance starts to resolve. Why they happen, I don't really know, but they are a warning sign of fatty liver. Fatigue, sugar cravings, like I said, elevated ALT and AST. High triglycerides is another thing to look for. And that makes sense, right? Because high triglycerides are basically fats in our bloodstream. And a lot of times people think, well, I have to eat a lot of fat to have high triglycerides, or, you know, they'll get their cholesterol panel done and they have high triglycerides. They're like, well, I'm on a low fat diet. Like I don't eat a lot of fat. How in the world are my triglycerides elevated? And remember, when you have a surplus of energy, maybe you eat too often. Maybe you eat the wrong types of food. Maybe you eat too many carbohydrates, processed foods, convenience food, fast food. Maybe not. Maybe you just have eaten too often for your whole life because we've been told to snack all the time. And your body has to convert the extra energy to fat. And some of that fat stays in the bloodstream and it will show up as high triglycerides. So when I look at somebody's lipid panel, I key into that triglyceride level even more so than I do the cholesterol, because high triglycerides are telltale of metabolic syndrome overall, insulin resistance, and fatty liver. So that would be another thing to look for. And oftentimes when the triglycerides are high, you'll have a low HDL on your cholesterol panel. So you'll kind of have this inverse, like I like to see high HDL and low triglycerides. So with metabolic, when your body is metabolically ill, usually we'll see the opposite of that. And so insulin resistance is usually at the root because it's been years and decades of misuse and not being able to utilize energy efficiently. And I had insulin resistance myself, even though I thought I was doing all the healthy things. But throughout my whole lifetime, like I'll be 50 in January, and throughout most of my lifetime, I ate really often, right? Because we're told to like get up and eat right away, keep eating, eat every couple of hours to keep your metabolism fueled, you know, eat all these healthy snacks, eat all these healthy whole grains. Like I ate all of that stuff, and I would start eating when I got up until the time I went to bed and think nothing of it. I was eating a lot of oatmeal. I was eating, whole grain breads and whole grain crackers and all of this stuff. And I became insulin resistant. As a registered dietitian, I was like, what is going on? And so once I started to do a lot of intermittent fasting and bring my carbohydrates down and focus more on high protein foods with fat in them, and I still eat carbohydrates, but they're pretty strategic, and I eat my food in a certain order and all of these things. And then I brought my circadian health, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Like I did all of those things to reverse my insulin resistance. I'll also talk a little bit about the Feel Great system, which helps to reverse insulin resistance as well. But insulin resistance is at the root of fatty liver, and that can be reversed. And so if you've gotten to the fatty liver diagnosis or the type 2 diabetes diagnosis, you have severe insulin resistance. You probably have never been told. Usually insulin is elevated for years to decades before those high blood sugars show up. Because think about it, if you've been eating really often and you've been eating, just how you were told to eat, and it's not your fault. Like I was the same way. I'm like, I ate what they told me, what I thought was healthy. And it just was like high blood sugar all the time. Well, your body does everything it can. It releases insulin. When your blood sugar's high, it wants it low, right? And so it will keep releasing insulin to keep those blood sugars stabilized. And over years to decades, you develop insulin resistance and you don't even know it, because we don't test for fasting insulin like we should. I have lots of podcasts on how to test for insulin resistance, get a fasting insulin, get a fasting glucose, and a fasting and lipid panel, and I can help you determine your insulin resistance. But get a fasting insulin, see what that number is, and because hardly anybody tests for it. It's a cheap test. It's like $12, but you have to ask for it usually. It's not standard on a lipid panel. But get that done. And a lot of times fasting insulin will be elevated before, or almost always fasting insulin is elevated before blood sugars become dysregulated. Because like I said, your body will just keep releasing insulin to keep those blood sugars low. So keep the blood sugar stabilized, but the insulin is high. So once you get to the point of high blood sugars and fatty liver, you've had insulin resistance or high insulin levels and insulin resistance for a very long time. And again, not your fault. Like this is what we were told to do. We were told to eat lots of whole grains and eat very often. And we've just become a lot less active. We live an indoor lifestyle, which also as I'll talk a bit about in a few minutes, indoor lifestyle also contributes to insulin resistance. Okay, what else? Artificial, yeah, talked about that. So the liver starts to fill up with fat because there's nowhere else for this fat to go. And so we go to the doctor and maybe our blood sugars are out of whack. Maybe we have high triglycerides. Maybe we even get an ultrasound and we're diagnosed with fatty liver. What do? There's not an actual medication that treats fatty liver directly because it's a lifestyle disease. So we have to reverse it with lifestyle. But what you'll probably be told by your doctor is that you can go on a GLP-1, you can go on a statin, or you can go on metformin. Like those are probably going to be your options if you get a fatty liver diagnosis, and none of them are treating the actual root cause. And so you just go through years and decades and it builds, and you end up how my mom ended up with cirrhosis and scarring and later cancer. So this does not fix the problem, but I have a 90-day reset that works beautifully to reset all of this, because like I said, you can reverse fatty liver. And if you have been told otherwise, it's a lie. You can reverse fatty liver and you can do it pretty quickly. And so what I have combined is the Feel Great system, which I'll talk about. These are really potent strategic nutraceuticals that are well studied. Your provider can find them in the provider's desk reference. It used to be called the provider's desk reference. Now it's called the provider's digital reference, the PDR. This is a huge database of medications. Like anytime you're going to go on a medication, or you have like your doctor's worried about medication interactions, your provider will look in the PDR, say, okay, like this is what this medication does, this is what it interacts with, this is the dosage, blah, blah, blah. These nutraceuticals in the Feel Great system are in the PDR. Not many are, okay? So they have to be highly studied and be shown to work. So nutraceuticals are basically pharmaceutical grade nutrition that are all natural. So they're like all natural pharmaceuticals. I don't like to say pharmaceuticals because they're natural, but they're basically pharmaceutical grade nutrition. And so the Feel Great system is 2 steps. I've been using it for 13 weeks or so. My cholesterol's come down 58 points. My LDL's come down 41 points. I was blown away. I've lost 7 pounds in 3 months, which I don't think I would ever lose 7 pounds. Like I'm a small person. So I was like, what? And I'm going to be 50. So really great results. But I've seen people come off of medications, cholesterol medications, insulin, so many high blood pressure medications, statins. If your provider is bugging you to go on a statin, the system can help you. And the other thing is when your provider looks in the PDR, because of all the studies that back these nutraceuticals as far as blood sugar and cholesterol goes, it will say right there, your doctor can read it right there, or your provider, and it will say, this nutraceutical can be used in place of a cholesterol lowering medication or blood sugar lowering medication. And boom, I mean, you don't need any more proof than that. There's 2 steps to it. One is, the first step is called Unimate, and it's a yerba mate concentrate. So you might have heard of yerba mate. People in South America drink it all the time. It's very potent. It's got chlorogenic acid in it. It's got saponins in it, and it's just natural. And so this helps with energy focus. It helps with raising GLP-1 hormones. So if you are on a GLP-1 medication, you want to come off of it, this works beautifully for people who want to transition off of GLP-1 medications because it naturally boosts GLP-1 and helps to stabilize energy. So that's the first step. And then the second step is called balance. That's a fiber matrix. This is where cholesterol reduction, blood sugar reduction, all comes into play with the fiber matrix. And these are so easy to use. You just drink the Unimate throughout the day, and then the balance, the fiber part of it, you just drink before your biggest meal. I drink mine in the late afternoon before my bigger lunch. Like I have a breakfast and a late lunch is how I do my intermittent fasting. And then I fast through late afternoon until morning. I drink my balance. That's it. Like that is all you need to do. And, because this has such big effects on insulin resistance, it helps to make that fatty liver, overcome fatty liver, bring those blood sugars down so the insulin levels comes down, your insulin resistance can resolve, and then your fatty liver can resolve. So that's step one. So I have 3 steps to my 90-day reset. So step 1 is starting Feel Great, the nutraceuticals. And then once you start the nutraceuticals, so if that was a little bit confusing, there's 3 steps to the reset. And then within step 1, the nutraceuticals, there are 2 nutraceuticals. So step 1 is Feel Great. It's called Feel Great. The whole system, the nutraceuticals combined are called Feel Great. Okay, so that's the first step. And then the second step is my Low Insulin Academy. That is all the education that you need in order to hit the lifestyle piece of it. So the nutraceuticals are so helpful because they just help you get over that hump, right? It's like you want to eat better, you want to intermittent fast, you want to sleep better. You know that these are the foundations. You want to be more active, but man, you feel like crap, right? Like it's just hard to get going. And so the nutraceuticals help you to just get started, right? Gives you more energy, starts reducing the blood sugars so you don't have the cravings, boosts the GLP-1. And then step 2 is the Low Insulin Academy. And that's my academy that I've developed several years ago. I keep adding to it. I keep updating it. I've had thousands of people go through Low Insulin Academy at this point. That's all the education around that you need. Nutrition education, blood sugar regulation. There's circadian health. There's circadian health lessons in there. What order should you eat your food in? What activities should you do? Do I have to do strength training? I want to start intermittent fasting. How do I do that? I'm a woman, I'm menstruating, and I know that it's not healthy for me to fast every single morning and overfast. I got myself into trouble, side note, doing too much intermittent fasting all morning, and I had a cortisol response to it. And that's a whole nother talk, but all of that is inside the academy, and that is just self-paced. It's 30 some lessons that I've recorded. You have lifetime access to them. You can revert back to them whenever you need to. And like I said, I continually update it so that you always have the most cutting edge information. And I recently put in some circadian health lessons in there because our circadian health, our lighting, right now I'm sitting, you probably, it looks pretty orangey to me because it's been, it's pitch black here. I live in Wisconsin and it's pitch black. But I have circadian friendly light bulbs in my lamp right now, so they're not so bright. But the lighting that you're under, how often you're outside, the sun exposure that you are exposed to, that all plays a role with your blood sugar. It all plays a role with your hormones and how your body's functioning. So there's that information is all in the academy. This has taken me years to learn and record all the lessons and get this all in one place. But when you start Feel Great, so Feel Great, the nutraceuticals are step 1, Low Insulin Academy. Step 2, get lifetime access. When you start a Feel Great subscription, because I believe in these nutraceuticals so much and I've seen them do such great things, you get Low Insulin Academy for 75% off. And like I said, this has taken me years to accumulate all this information and get it in one place. So that's step 2, Low Insulin Academy. When you start a Feel Great subscription, you get a 75% off coupon for Low Insulin Academy. And then the third step is support. And so I offer free monthly support meetings. A lot of people ask me, do you do personalized consults? Do you work with people one-on-one? And yes, I do. But a lot of times people can't afford it. They don't have the time. And so the monthly support meetings I do once a month. And anybody who's got a Feel Great subscription, we come together and we talk about how things are going. Any roadblocks you're running into, results that you're seeing. It's just an amazing support group. So those are my 3 steps for the 90-day reset. The nutraceuticals, the Low Insulin Academy, and the support. And those things, if you really give it a go for 90 days, just the nutraceuticals alone, a lot of people are able to reverse their insulin resistance and lose weight. But the Low Insulin Academy really lets you go at it really hard and say, you know, what do I say about fat, protein, carbs? What do I say about meal timing? What do I say about activity? What do I say about intermittent fasting? What do I say about how to keep this all going? That's all in the Academy. And then you join the support groups as step 3. What did I miss? Oh, I also have a whole module on stress and a whole module on sleep, because those 2 things play a huge role with metabolic health as well. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I had a very highly stressful year in 2024. I lost both my parents within 8 months, and it was just a lot going on. I had to clean out their house, just so many things. I had a really rotten 2024. Didn't know if I should go with, you know, keep going with my business. Everything was suffering on, you know, professionally. And I started seeing really high blood sugars. I started seeing high blood sugars after my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And then I went to, you know, treatments with her, and I watched her go through chemo. I watched her basically die in hospice for an entire month. And it was just a lot, right? So I started having these high blood sugars in the morning, despite fasting for 18 hours. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I've never had high blood sugars in my life. All of a sudden they're like 108, 112. I'm like, I am not eating anything differently. And I haven't eaten since last night at 5 o'clock, and my blood sugar keeps climbing. If that's happening to you, it is a stress response. And I just kept fasting through the morning, and I wasn't paying attention to my circadian rhythm, and I was circadian disrupted at that point. Didn't know it. I've learned all of that. I've applied the circadian health and the circadian rhythm components that I teach inside Low Insulin Academy. Applied all that and started eating earlier. I started eating breakfast again, a high protein breakfast, and I've always loved eating breakfast, so it was really hard for me those years that I was fasting all morning. So I started eating breakfast earlier, nice, you know, big high protein breakfast. And I didn't eat for like 5 or 6 hours. Now I eat like 2 to 3, have another big high protein meal, and then I fast till the morning. And like right now it's 6 o'clock Wisconsin time. I'm not hungry at all. Like I ate at 2:45, and every once in a while I get a little bit hungry before bed, but I just go to bed and then I fast till morning. So this works so much better for me. I don't even feel like I'm intermittent fasting. Everybody's different. I understand, like, it's not socially acceptable for everybody.